I have to admit, I am, as I know all of us on the committee are, shocked and dismayed to hear from you, Mr. Kutz, that you had 100 allegations that you chose to choose the 10 from, and you stopped at 100. You'd received 100, but there were more coming in, and you stopped because that's all you could process at the time. Clearly, the scope of the problem is large, and this is something that runs deep. It sheds a lot of doubt on our efforts to date. Obviously, something's not going right, and we need to fix this problem. And what I want to make sure that we, going ahead, avoid is simply taking punitive action on these 10 particular fraudulent businesses and then moving on and not fixing the system. So we've got a big responsibility that we all share now to get this right going forward. Administrator Mills, I mentioned in my opening statement, you just started this spring. This problem has obviously been endemic in the system before you came in, but you own the SBA portion of the response now. What I'd like to make sure that I understand is what you see the SBA's role in ensuring that, short of a GAO study, we have mechanisms in place to find out when companies are defrauding our veteran business owners earlier in the process rather than reacting at this stage in the game. And I just want to make sure I kind of understand your view of the SBA's role vis-a-vis the contracting agencies who actually go out in the field and do the day-to-day contracting. And how do you see the SBA fitting in with those contracting officers in practicing the oversight to make sure that going forward we have ways to solve this problem?
Thank you, Congressman Knight. There are a number of pieces to this question that you just asked. First of all, overall, on the specifics of this program, the first piece of it is to make sure we get the 2 nodes of the eligibility right. Pretty confident that we can get our node of it right, but we need to be able to have access to accurate data from the Veterans Administration. I think we have made it good inroads in making a collaboration and having them push that up their priority scale. Partnership is good, and we're going to make sure that stays top of mind. Overall, we also work with all the different agencies, and this is a bigger problem. We just heard Representative Bartlett also speak to some of this question about how do you make sure that the purchasing agents who are actually contracting are doing the right things, are aggressively, as he said, casting a wider net, and as you said, making sure that they let these contracts to people who they know are small businesses and are service disabled or meet various criteria. We are highly focused on that issue, and the Recovery Act has allowed us really much greater force and impetus in our relationships with each of the different other agencies. That's one of the reasons why we're exceeding our goals. So now that we have these very strong foundations with everyone from the VA to the Department of Defense that are working with us, we are able to do more training, set expectations, deliver consequences, work on going after and making examples of those who don't comply. So there are a series of activities that that will be required to make sure this entire contracting activity delivers full, accountable, transparent, and correct contracts to those who are eligible.
Okay. Well, I think what I'm hearing is that you see the SBA's role as being extremely proactive in terms of dealing with the federal agencies on their small business contracting to help ensure that this kind of problem doesn't happen. What I want to avoid, and I intend to hold additional hearings in my subcommittee on this particular topic about our service-disabled veteran-owned business. What I want to avoid is the situation where we look back a year from now, recognize that we had a problem a year ago, and still find ourselves pointing fingers at the other, saying, well, it was really kind of more their responsibility than ours, and they're the one that didn't do their job. And I think clearly the SBA is in a position, I think, to take a leadership role here and help us solve this problem. So I'm looking forward to being at the position a year from now where we look back and can say we did it right and we really fixed this problem. So I want to thank you for your comments. Mr. Kutz, I just wanted to ask you, I noted in your report that contracting officers from some federal agencies seem to suggest and acknowledge that they really didn't care much about the details of the execution of contracting to service disabled veteran-owned companies, and that they were really just more concerned with making sure that the contracting got done expediently. I would like to know what your thoughts are on how we can solve that problem. Is this a training issue with the contracting officers? How can we change that culture? Because to my mind, this problem can largely be solved with professional contracting officers that buy into the reason behind why we have these targets for contracting to our service-disabled owned veterans. I think you've heard from all the members of this committee how much we care about the mission, and from our panelists today. But where the rubber meets the road out in the field, the contracting officers doing the day-to-day contracting, if they don't care about this program, and if they don't care about the effect on employment for veterans, it's going to be very hard for us to get this right. And so I'd like to have your ideas about how we can fix that part of the problem.
Well, I think Mr. Barlow made some very insightful comments on that. The contracting officers have kind of a perverse set of incentives out there. They are trying to reach these going requirements. They want to get the work done with companies they already know. If a new company shows up that's a service-disabled vet company, they're not necessarily as comfortable with that. So they have a lot of competing interests in this. So it's going to be a difficult issue to solve, and maybe we have to work on not just the goaling requirements, but they should also be held accountable for making sure you don't have fraud in this program. Right now, there seems to be no incentive for them to call it like that. If there's much more incentive for them to say, hey, that is a service-disabled contract. I get a click, I get a score towards my performance measures, and if it's a big company doing the work, there seems to be no consequences in place. So it's a combination of they may not care, they may have the wrong set of incentives, and they're really not involved with enforcement.
Would the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
I think that we got a problem here where you find, the contracting officer saying, well, that is not my responsibility. It is SBA's responsibility to call for accountability and oversight. So whose responsibility is to make sure that the program is accomplishing the goals in a way that were intended by the statute?
Well, as of now, nobody, and that's the whole problem. Mm-hmm. And so I know what the SBA is talking about here is looking forward. If you look back, the answer is nobody.
And looking forward, the responsibility then
our
lies.
Responsibility.
Pardon?
Well, we take on that responsibility.
Okay. Thank you for yielding.
Well, I appreciate your ideas. Again, it is disheartening to realize the depth of this problem. But again, thank you for doing the job of putting this report together to highlight the challenges we face and the fact that we've got to start today on solving this major problem. We have service-disabled veterans who have put on the country this uniform and put their life on the line overseas for us, returned home, made the decision to again take a risk to get into starting a small business, applying their skills, and playing by the rules, doing the best they can to compete honestly for contracts, getting put on the sidelines because there are those who decided to take advantage of the system, and we haven't done enough to catch them and prevent them from being able to sideline our vets. Clearly, I think we understand the scope of the problem. We know we've got marching orders going forward. I want to make sure that today marks the beginning of the end of this problem. I will be very disappointed if we look back a year from now and don't say that we achieved that goal. So thank you.